Yeah, and credit to Inter for all those great videos. Now I work for Cultural Resources, and I have a great team there that I kind of want to give credit to Jeffrey Maurer and Jade Nakamura. So a lot of my research, when I first got to Cultural Resources, they had done a lot of internment research about Kilauea military camp, and some of the research included Kenichi Maehara and his time at the park. I kind of came in later, and I like to think helped fill in some more of the gaps, but there's still more research to be done. So I kind of stand on the shoulders of giants or whatever, because Jeff and Jade know a lot about the park, and I'm glad to work with them. And then another person who's not here tonight that I wanted to be here, and we were emailing back and forth, and Dean knows this. Ruth Ozeki is Kenichi Maehara's granddaughter, and so it took me a while to find her. I might talk about this later if I have time. Oh yeah, I gotta set a timer because I'm long-winded, so it will help me not go over. Ruth Ozeki, she has made films and wrote books and talking about Japanese American experience. This is kind of her story, so I wanted her permission to present before I went and told it. Even though it's a national park story as well, I like to work with the descendants because, my family has their own stories, and it's nice to collaborate with people instead of being like, oh, I wish they would have said that differently, and I don't want to be that person that kind of is, taking somebody else's life or their experiences and portraying them in a way that isn't worthy of who they were. So I'm grateful to all of those people and all the work they've done. This is Kenichi Maehara, and at the bottom there is his photo studio, and then over there is the 1924 eruption. So I'll talk a little bit about these things. But I have a quote. Whenever a green eye shade and a camera are seen together on the streets of Hilo, their owner is 10 to 1 apt to be Kenzo Maehara, veteran Hilo photographer, a Hawaii Tribune reporter wrote in 1932. Mr. Maehara is not a graduate of any photographer's school, but is a self-made man who is proud of his business. His Hawaiian scenes are much admired. So it's kind of interesting. I began this project, and we have a few, well, actually not as much documentation as I would have thought. I started doing a social media post and being like, oh, of course, National Park has documentation on our official park photographer because we did business with him, and he was a concessionaire. And just like Volcano House, we have years and years and years of records of Volcano House agreements and what their land lease was like. And I go through the archives and find all these things, just like a lot of our other researchers. But when I started kind of writing the post, and I wanted to get the citations right so it was accurate as possible, I was like, I don't know where these records are. Like, how do I tell this story? Like, we don't have the paperwork, and this government speaking paper. So it's a little, it bothered me. Let me put it that way. I was like, was he the official park photographer? We didn't even have a picture of him. All we had was a drawing done during his internment by George Hoshida. And so, and I was like, a photographer? We don't even have a picture of him. I don't know, I kept thinking about it. It was just something that, as a researcher, you just felt like there was something missing there, and that's something the park had lost, for whatever reason. So Going through the research, I found record of a Kenichi Maehara coming to Hawaii in 1896. And in Ruth Ozeki's film, Having the Bones, which I would recommend, she talks about her grandfather coming to Hawaii to work on a plantation as an indentured servant or equivalent and kind of make his fortune. That was his foot in the door, and he didn't have much money, and he kind of grew to become more. So the next record I found of him was actually, oh, and another fun note. He emigrated when he was 16 years old. Kenichi Maehara was born on April 2nd, 1880. Some papers say June 28th. Others, references say July 4th, 1896. And if it is July 4th, 1896, that would be 2 years after the establishment of the Republic of Hawaii, which was formed after the American-backed coup that overthrew the Hawaiian government, and then 2 years before the annexation of Hawaii by the United States. So it's kind of an interesting time in Hawaiian history, kind of a tumultuous time going from a nationhood to a territory. So the world Kenichi came to was very different than the one we live in now. This is Honolulu Harbor around that time. This is Front Street. Around the turn of the century, I don't see any cars. There was no date for this photo. However, the location of the post office matched one of the fire insurance maps. So, and the Front Street post office is where Kenichi Maehara worked. So if you actually look, in 1901, he started working at the post office, which was very interesting. He actually went to a boarding school in Hilo. I assumed learned more, maybe English, but he was hired also for his ability to read Japanese. So you need to be proficient in both to work for the Postal Service, and not many people could do that. Reading the newspaper article when he retired, he's hard to replace. So starting in 1901, he worked here. And this is closer, you can see the boxes. In 1911, Kenichi married Matsue Okubo, and they had 2 children. Kenichi retired from the Postal Service after 20 years in 1921 due to impaired eyesight in one of his eyes, and he got a half pension from the government, which, again, it was one of his eyes, and I assume he was able to, actually I don't assume, he was able to continue with his photography and actually devoted more of his time to his photography, even though only a few years before he started the camera craft shop. So he pivoted from working for the Postal Service full-time and photography part-time to photography as a full-time job. And then you can see advertisements for the camera craft shop. Front Street is Kamehameha Avenue. And then the shops, or what you just saw, was wiped out by the tsunami later. Although that post office was turned down, and then later it went to the federal building. Okay, anyways. He grew to become president of the Japanese Association. He was a member of the Hilo Poets Association, the Hawaii Island Photographers Association, and he owned and operated the Camera Craft Shop, the Kilauea Art Studio, the Chicago Studio, and then eventually the Volcano Photo Studio. I'm kind of covering a lot of different, he would go from, depending on the decade or the year, different businesses. He would often operate these businesses with his wife, and she would colorize his photos, and she was good at it. People really liked the work that they did And he went from to be able to kind of facilitate other people's kind of passion for photography. He has a contest, I found, that he was facilitating, so it's kind of interesting. And some of the prizes involve cameras. So. Here I have some pages I found in the State Archive from Paradise of the Pacific, which is a pretty popular magazine back in the day. And so a lot of people were published in Paradise of the Pacific at that time. And then this one, I believe these photos were colorized because it's night fishing photos. But I only found the black and white one so far. I liked this one. This is a 1927 eruption. It says, this photograph by Kenichi Maehara, celebrated Hilo cameraman, is a close-up of a portion of the lower section of the view on page opposite. Oh, I didn't include that one. Sorry. Yeah, he started taking photos of the volcano, and which were very popular and sold well. Here we have a snow-capped Mauna Kea from Hilo Bay, and then you have Coconut Island in the foreground. A Honolulu Star Bulletin reporter said, "It is doubtful if anyone has equaled Mr. Maehara's picture of snow-capped Mauna Kea taken from the shoreline near Coconut Island. As a photographer and a gentleman of the old school, Mr. Maehara has few equals." So I hope I kind of established him as a Hilo businessman and entrepreneur. We're going to pivot to the national park. So Hawaiʻi Volcanoes National Park in the 1920s. I like this photo. This is Ue Kahuna back in the day. I believe it's more kind of between Hilo Overlook and Ue Kahuna, but there was no museum in the area. People would park their cars to view the volcano from the high vantage point. So Kenichi Maehara would do the same thing, and if you look, on May 18th, 1924, this is probably one of his most popular series of photos, there was an explosion, same explosion that killed a person named Truman Taylor, and Kenichi Maehara happened to be in the right place at the right time, although the eruption had been going on for a few weeks already. These photos kind of were circulated widely. I think they really put him on the map, and we use them still today because they're just the 1924 explosion photos. Nothing really captures it the same. I like these colorized versions because I like to imagine Matsue would be colorizing them. Here, oh, this one's fun. And you have, ooh, I have a laser pointer. This is where I get distracted. Okay, HVO, the Whitney Vault. Old volcano house, kind of where the hula platform is now. Then, those buildings don't exist. Tahara House. The Tahara family lived in the park, and then this building, and Mr. Tahara was also interned during World War II. This building was later used by Dr. Jagger for university classes, I believe. But the area we're going to focus on, I think I actually have a little square, the tennis courts and the Volcano House garage, or what the old one was. This area is where we are today. We're kind of staring at the building that we are in, except it's not here yet. Tahara House, remember that? This was the old tennis court with the garage. I just think it's interesting to kind of see how the world looked back then. So these are the building plans from our official park database that I found and Jeff and Jade found before me. This was one of the documents that we did have because most park buildings we will have the plans for because they have to be approved by architects and from Washington often. This one specifically, let me look. Let's see. Let me add some context here. So there were national parks. Think of like Ansel Adams. National parks wanted photographers. It kind of featured their the natural wonders. It was good for promotion. And in 1929, they asked for applicants, and Kenichi Maehara was chosen because of some of the photos you saw and his reputation of being a businessman in the field. And he had to submit these plans to the National Park Service to be approved. And it kind of looks very different than anything like you would see in a national park today, which I kind of am wondering why. I think part of it is administration. There was a different superintendent at the time who escapes my mind, but he chose Maehara, and then Thomas Vint, the landscape architect, chose the site as the tennis courts, he approved the sketches submitted by Maehara, which has, I think there's a quote here, "The studio building will be Japanese-esque, with the tile roofing and projecting windows. This is to be the first building of the type in the territory. Approximate cost of the structure is placed at $5,000. Covering an area of 38 feet by 28 feet, the building will have a store, photographer's room, and living room. A large water tank will be placed in the rear." So, yeah, kind of different compared to the arts and crafts style that you see in the parks often. Let's see if this works. There's the studio building, so remember those aerials, you remember HBO. Here's the Ohio wing for those that know that. And then here is the studio, and then there we are. Oh, we're not here yet, darn it. And then this building still exists. Spoiler alert, it burns down. I kind of miss it sometimes. As far as buildings go, both old 1920s Volcano House and the Volcano Photo Studio are the buildings I miss most in the park, and I think about them and wish they were still here, and I didn't have to stare at other boring brown buildings. Here's the front of the studio, and there is Kenichi Maehara. It's hard to imagine, I think, a building like this being in a national park, but it does not predate the park. The Park Service approved it, which is fascinating to think about, but it was a different time, and it was pre-World War II. I think part of the reason why, well, I'll get to the unfortunate fact in a little bit. But we're in the heyday of the Volcano Photo Studio. Cards. He is the authorized park photographer for Hawaiʻi Volcanoes National Park. Oh, Hawaii National Park, because we have not separated from Haleʻakalala yet. Camera Craft Shop. He still runs the business in Hilo. It says vivid and unusual pictures of Kilauea in action. And so he had prints, he had postcards, and he could develop film. And then I like to, this is the photograph I showed you before, but I kind of zoomed in. He has the HNP, Hawaii National Park photographer lapel, too, which I think is kind of cool. So I just want to get it in our collective minds that he was like in the park, you know? right next to this building, you know, and he had to be here because to capture moments in the volcano if it's going to erupt like it might today. I'm going to do a side note, but there was a pool. I don't think we win anything, but kind of, to see when the eruption was, and I put the date of the eruption, this was months ago, as the day of my talk, and I might be right. And you're all forgiven if you want to go see that. But yeah, let's see. I also wanted to add, I have a few notes here. So 1935 FDR visits, and I really wanted to find a picture of this so that I could show you. They're pretty common, I just had trouble finding the folder for it. But FDR, or Franklin Delano Roosevelt, comes to the park to inspect the work of the CCC. So the park has a lot of development during the 30s, during the Depression era, and Kenichi Maehara is chosen as a photographer, let's see, he's given a press pass to take photos of the president. And during that time, not anyone could take photos of the president. I actually found a lawsuit of someone who did not have permission, and the government sued them. And then he was representing Niku Jiji, the Japanese-American newspaper based out of Honolulu. So just to show, official park photographer, had official credentials. Let's see, I'm gonna skip forward a little bit. So that was during the 30s, and then Pearl Harbor happens. Now, in 1941, Kenichi Maehara actually closed the camera craft shop, early 1941, let me say. He closed the camera craft shop, or he stopped being the proprietor of the camera craft shop. He actually sold the business to someone else, and exclusively was living in Volcano, at the Volcano Photo Studio. That's where he was running his business. So 6 days before Pearl Harbor, Kenichi Maehara goes to Oahu to visit his son, who's in a mental health facility there. So he is not on this island, when Pearl Harbor happens, which is interesting to know. I had to figure that one out, because if he had been here, he would have gone to KMC. The government had planned it out. They had lists of people. Actually, a lot of people in FDR's administration wanted hundreds, tens of thousands of Japanese to be arrested and relocated to be incarcerated. However, Japanese Americans made 37% of the population at the time. It would cripple Hawaii's economy. And then even the FBI agent that Hoover sent said, I think these people are more loyal than you think they are, because I am not seeing the amount of subversion that people seem to be paranoid about. And so this is pre-Pearl Harbor. So the compromise they made was that a few community members, prominent community members, this would be teachers, this would be priests, this would be, like I said, Kenichi Maehara was president of the Japanese Association on the island. They kind of punished people for being successful in that way, that you are being too influential in the community or too successful, or you have too much influence, let me say, that we would remove you. And so they did. And so this is actually a photo from the day that was confiscated from a Japanese plane later and is in the National Archives. So this is Superintendent Wingate. Superintendent Wingate and Kenichi Maehara I don't understand their relationship. I'm just gonna be honest here. Sometimes they seem like friends, and sometimes they don't. I really wanted to screenshot it, but I go through the paperwork, so the superintendent has reports, and it says Volcano Photo Studio is doing satisfactory service. So, Volcano Photo Studio, and then like the next year, the Volcano Photo Studio is doing satisfactory service. And then one year, Wingate, or someone, I'm pretty sure Wingate, this Volcano Photo Studio is doing, and then somebody writes in pencil, mostly in a satisfactory service. And I'm like, oh, there's a story there, I don't know. Wingate, on December 7th, he and some Army investigators go into the studio and the Volcano Photo Studio and confiscate items in there that seem suspicious. I think I have discussion of it, although let me read my notes here. One thing to note is also, so in 1935, Kenichi Maehara took photos of the bombing of Mauna Loa lava flow. Kenichi Maehara did this at the request of Dr. Jagger. And Dr. Jagger at the time, HBO was a part of the Park Service. And so the government asked Kenichi Maehara to take the photos. And Dr. Jagger published it. It was actually, these photos weren't horribly secret. However, once World War II happened, this became a secret military operation. And it was evidence of Kenichi Maehara's subversion. So the government asked him to take the photos, and then the government was like, why did you take the photos? And so they questioned him on this, and he's like, I did it because Dr. Jagger asked me to. And they're like, well, did you take the photos? And you're like, no, I sent my employee to take the photos. And so they go back and forth. But this was a secret military operation. I don't think Dr. Jagger got that memo, because he talked about it a lot. He published about it. This was kind of an unfortunate thing. Also, when they raided the studio, they found, I forgot, money and, sorry, I'm just trying to look at my note, lewd images. Wingate seems to think it's a big deal. The rest of the people, when they're doing a board hearing, which was basically just a summary hearing that said, these are the things we accuse you of. They don't really feature that too much. They talk about how he helped collect comfort kits for the Japanese military, or helped do this or that. A lot of things that they list are things that Kenichi Maehara did not lead or have a big part in. However, they use it as evidence against him. The lewd images are of note because Wingate says it's a violation of the park's concessionaires agreement, that the superintendent has to approve all things that are distributed, and that if Kenichi Maehara was selling things to soldiers that may be of that nature, that was a violation of the agreement, and so he stopped the concessionaires agreement based on that. And I thought that was just an excuse. I don't. Yeah, this is kind of. And then the other fact is that so Kenichi Maehara came to Hawaii when he was 16, and this is like over 40 years later. So, and he's not allowed to be a citizen. So he's being treated under rules that are international laws. But he has no ability to have any nationality in America, and he's being treated as a Japanese citizen, but he hasn't been to that country or lived in that country for decades now. It seems kind of unfair. So, he's sent to an internment camp, and his wife has to, she keeps selling colorized images to kind of support both of them. In the internment camp, he joins a poetry group, or helps form a poetry group, and I would like to kind of know what their poetry was. I think the granddaughter has it. He wrote in Japanese, so I don't know. It's as far as internment goes, I cover a lot of the national park stuff. Let me put it this way. I am not a Japanese American. I don't know the Japanese American experience. I know Hawaii. Sometimes I have emotions connected to Hawaii because I'm Hawaiian. This is kind of, I don't know what it's, you know, the generational trauma of being in an internment camp, but I know it's gotta be painful, and this is part of the story that I think I have to research more. There are certain records groups and intelligence files that I've actually been trying to pull. I found the FBI file on Kenichi Maehara, and one of the FBI people, this is another interesting thing, I don't even know if I mentioned it. Kenichi Maehara, some of these things that they got him on, like owning a radio, owning a pistol, these are violation of the military governor's orders after martial law is established in Hawaii. But one of the FBI official says he wasn't here to comply with the order, so how can we use it against him if this was not a violation before he left? And so you kind of find files, and you find kind of bits and pieces of a puzzle. But internment, I am finding photos, and I find a lot of photos of Kenichi Maehara in groups, and I don't know the whole story there. And I'm hoping the granddaughter has more to tell us. And that's the other second part, is that I'm hoping she can come and tell us, kind of, well, or come and tell you the family side of the story. I will also say that one of my most exciting moments was finding her. Because Kenichi Maehara, after the war, changes his name. It's also a name he already used, but he officially changes his name when he returns to Hawaii, to Yokoyama. And that's why we, as the Park Service, kind of lost him. And I was so excited when I found that in the newspaper, because I found him, and then people I talked to was like, "Are you sure it's him?" And I'm like, "Oh, darn it." And then I found an announcement for his daughter's wedding. She had gone to Yale and graduated. And so, the announcement had her last name is Yokoyama, and then his last name is Maehara. So that allowed me to find her, and find her books, and find things that I was like, this has to be the right person. And then when I watched the movie that she made about her family's experience, and her grandfather's internment, and what they knew about it, it was like a revelation, I think. So that's, and I tried to find her, and I tried to contact her, and then I was gonna give up because I had emailed the wrong email, and then I was like, I saw her book in a bookstore, and just randomly, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't believe in signs, but it's kind of a sign. I know that's Kenichi Maehara's granddaughter. I gotta email her again. And so I found her, she teaches at Smith College, and I found her contact information, and I was able to contact her, and it was kind of, and she said that she didn't know why her grandfather was interned. And that was impactful that we could share that, because all I have is government paperwork, but families have kind of the third dimension of a person, like the actual humanness of someone. So, yeah, I find pictures of things. Here's 1943, afterwards, after they tore it down. So Wingate petitioned the Provost Marshal, or the enemy alien property custodian, to tear down the studio, because Kenichi Maehara still owned it. And eventually he got permission to tear it down, and he didn't think the building kind of fit with the rest of the buildings. There's a book that he has that talks about how we're going to tear down this building, and this is in the 30s. He did not like it, and so I think he used the war as an excuse to, again, kind of tear down something. And then, yeah, Kenichi Maehara, the records that I find of Kenichi Maehara's and the Park Service, I find in the National Archives, not our archives. His concessionaire agreements are in their archives, but we seem to lack them, and they enlighten us to the fact that his wife helped him run the business, or different things about like, what they were selling, and what the prices were, boring stuff. But yeah, it's sad that we don't have that, and that's why I'm trying to find every piece of paper to find. So that's kind of comes to the lost legacy part, is that we don't have everything, but I do think we should have more, and I'm trying to find more about Kenichi Maehara. I go to every newspaper or something and see what I can glean through a search. But we need descendant stories, because people aren't going to be around forever. We need to make our collections better. I'm hoping that we can add some of Kenichi Maehara's photos to our collections beyond what we have, either through collectors. The granddaughter said she might donate, but I do know people that have photos. I collect his postcards. But it's interesting to kind of, I don't know. I think we need to preserve this history, because I can't believe that something I drive by every day was here and then isn't. Yeah. Anyways, one other thing I want to share. I think I went through that quicker than I thought. Usually I'm a Kenichi Maehara evangelist, and I'm like, I found this new fact about Kenichi Maehara, but I might be nervous. I do have Up in Arms. It's a publication by Jade about KMC internment. Another thing is that Kilauea Military Camp has more to the story. I just found a file. I don't know what's in it, but I want to get it about conscientious objectors that were locked up at KMC during World War II. There are apparently maybe Korean soldiers locked up during World War II who were our allies, which I find strange. But Kilauea Military Camp, the room that people were interned in, is where the air hockey tables are now. It's where people play pool, or you get a hamburger. I'm hoping that we as a park can interpret these things better. I show, he's here. This is not, he has to be here. This is kind of a piece of us that we can't lose. And so hoping in the future that we can interpret these things. Jade helped put up some waysides at KMC, and I think those were so important. And so Up in Arms is just a little pamphlet that she wrote, and some stuff about Kenichi Maehara. I also have, which I think is also important, this is for me personally, if anyone's interested in Hawaii internment research, I have all the record groups that you need to pull files from if your family or a family member was interned. Everywhere where I found records, I want to share with people, because I can't believe believe, you know, these things would be hidden by a government bureaucracy. The hardest part, finding the FBI file, that was so hard, you know, and then so easy at the end. But these are people's lives, you know, and they lived here, and they lived right where we live today. So I want people to be able to access their family stories, and so if that's interesting to you, I have it up here. I also wanted to say, I mean, I'm a researcher. I just find things. I helped make the webpage. There is a World War II history. Confinement in the Land of Enchantment project talks more about the internment, and then having the bones, like I mentioned, by Ruth Ozeki, has more of the personal experience to this story. But yeah, and there's my email. I want to acknowledge the help of Culture Resources and everyone that I've worked with over the past year. And if you have any questions, I think I can help. Thank you.
All right, we have time for questions. So, now's your chance.
Are there many pictures in the archive that
Yes, in our superintendent reports, mostly. We have a couple more of his studio, some in the Bulls collection. Those colorized ones were from the Bulls collection. Not as much as I know is out there. So, yes, we do have some. And as far as paper records go, like I mentioned, not that much at all. So that's what I'm trying to find more. I want to have, hopefully, someday, a dream, a Kenichi Maehara photo collection would be perfect, because I think that would be a great legacy. Jessica.
Can you go back to the photo of him with the other men in the internment? And
Yes.
that is where?
Oh, sorry, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Okay, because I thought maybe it was, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay. That's a good question.
And he is the man front and center with glasses?
Yes, yes.
Which one?
Oh, sorry. This one.
Oh, okay, I thought he was the front and center.
Oh, no.
What?
But, yeah, he aged, or, I think his family mentioned that he aged quite a bit, being in the camp. So, yeah, it's kind of, and he is, older. I mean, he was born in 1880. I do not know. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, you speak about him with such passion, and you have so many details. I think you may turn this into a video project because it's a significant story of someone whose life was erased due to racism, and just the sadness that we see in this photo. It's just a story worth telling. I mean, the story of the missing house is just so powerful, and the missing person.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, his granddaughter's a filmmaker too, and want to see what she wants to do with it. But definitely, we as a park, it's important to tell this story. So, like a lot of things, I'm sure it's about funding, but this story, I don't think we should let go in any form. So, you know, paper, video, web pages, all important, so we don't forget. Yep.
You may well have run across it, but there's an old Bamboo Ridge Press publication called Behind Barbed Wire, which was interned Japanese from Hawaii, collections and poems.
Yeah.
There's also a poet lived in Volcano Village, Albert Saijo, who was
Mhm.
interned
Yeah.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah, email.
Except I can't read your email.
Oh, yeah, oh, darn it. Yeah, send me the link, and my email's also on these forms up here. I printed it out. Any descendants, I think we were talking about how anyone who was interned at KMC is a part of park history. We can't deny that. And so these are families that, names that we know in the local community. They have stories. And they were here, and then they weren't, which is hard. So, but want their legacy to live on.
You got a hand up back
Oh,
here.
sorry.
Is Margaret do business on Front Street?
Yes.
Is it known approximately what business is located in that location?
You know, I was looking at the fire insurance map, but I still gotta find to the right location. And it's a little different because of pre-tsunami. So I don't know, unless you know how to find old Kamehameha businesses. But best I have is the fire insurance map right now, but I'm still working on it. It would be cool to see if it still exists, which I'm sure you're thinking about. Anyone else? Yes?
I guess after when he came back to Hawaii, did he resume photography, or he said he was over that?
Yeah, so this is another thing that I feel like the family will know more than us. Right? I like to think of this as an introduction to Kenichi Maehara 101, to a bigger course. But he came back after the war, as far as I know. He lived in Honolulu for a bit, and I think lived at a house with the help of a friend or who might have owned the property, according to his granddaughter. And then kind of became disillusioned with the United States, according to his family, and left in 1960, and then died a few years later. So went to Japan, and died there. So, you know, I think he wanted to continue on in the park service, but Wingate said, I do not want this man hired ever again. So, at any park, which was interesting, he wrote to Washington. He did not. And I don't know the story there. Wingate's actually a complicated figure in our history, probably worthy of a talk, and I think there's been talked about him. Wingate was very pro kind of military, very, but then as the military kind of exploited the park as far as bombing and other things had created tensions, and so Superintendent Wingate, he's an interesting person. So, but yeah, I think he was very heavy-handed after Pearl Harbor. Yes. The question? Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say this. So, she asked if Maehara's wife accompanied him to the internment camp. I was able to find record that Maehara applied to have his family come, and then they could stay in a relocation camp, which the difference is that relocation camps were for American citizens of Japanese ancestry, and it was a violation of their constitutional rights, but it was by executive order. So they could go as a family, because internment camps were all for men, and families could live in the relocation camps together. Kenichi Maehara did not, and relocation camps are also very similar concentration camps, barbed wire, as many of us know from other sources. So she did not want to come. She said that she did not want to go to a strange place, and that was, yeah. And I think even though he wanted his family there, his wife was resistant to going to New Mexico, which was just, if you live in Hawaii, I don't know. It's a hard choice to make as far as going to a place you know nothing about. So I can't, I don't know. They did let him apply for repatriation. They would do exchanges sometimes. He did not want to go back to Japan during the war. He refused to be repatriated. He wanted to stay in America. And it's because he lived here. As he said, his business is in America, his life's in America. And he flat out told me, like, my life's in Hawaii. Any other questions?
All right. Oh, one more right over here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
How soon after the war ended did the internment camp disassemble or whatever? Do we know that? I mean, did the war ended and then
As far as when he came back,
well, as far as when they would keep people in Santa Fe before they let them go back home?
I know it was months after the war. I don't know an exact date, but it wasn't like the war ended and he came home. I believe one source says 1946, and I have to verify that one.
All right. Well, if you didn't get your questions answered because you didn't want to speak in front of the whole group, that's okay because Anekelea will be here. So come on up afterwards. Just 2 weeks from tonight, we're having an after dark in the park with our very own David Benitez, The Forest in the Pit Crater. Some of you know he did this program at the Kahuku unit, standing room only. So please join us for that if you're local. If not local, then just fly back here for that. Have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.